Hello, this is Carrie, and we're going to get started by thinking about how to read like a researcher. The idea is we want you to feel confident and capable as you move into finding articles and reading articles for your capstone proposal and your capstone literature review. First of all, there are lots of different types of resources. And let's think a little bit about the different types. First of all, you have journal resources, and there are professional journals linked to your professional organization. So if you're a reading person or a literacy person, you're probably going to look at journals that are published by the International Literacy Association, and that could be the Reading Research Quarterly, Language Arts, or the Reading Teacher. Now, what's interesting is as you read articles in these journals, you'll realize that they have different kinds of, I guess, flavors, right? So the Reading Research Quarterly is going to be research articles. And Language Arts magazine's primarily going to be about instructional ideas or theory. So as you get familiar with your professional journals, you'll get to understand that they have different kinds of styles, and the articles in them will be of a certain type. We also have lots of text resources that we have at the Otterbein Library or available through Interlibrary Loan. So some text resources are like this Ann Hawes-Dyson text, this is one study that she's done, and she's describing it. It's an ethnography, so she needs more room than the 20 pages that are usually what an article is. So maybe you have a study that's published in a book. Or you might have a book like this, Purposeful Play by Hallie and Ruth Yopp. And this book is a little bit about a lit review, and then it provides lots of instructional strategies. This book by Mark Seidenberg is a really hot book in literacy circles right now. And it is his literature review. So he's reviewing lots of pieces of literature to make a particular argument. So just like there are different types of articles in journals, there are different types of publications in books. A really nice resource that is often a discovery for folks in their master's degree program are handbooks. So there's a handbook of reading research, there's a handbook of teaching English as a second language, there's a handbook for multimodal literacies, there's a handbook for just about any area that you might want to research. And these handbooks are put out by the professional associations that you might be affiliated with. So the National Council of Teachers of English put out a handbook. This one is the one that we see on the screen is the Handbook of Reading Research from the International Reading Association. And what's really nice about handbooks, if you get the latest edition of the handbook, so this is the 2020 edition of the handbook, you can look through the table of contents and you can see the handbooks usually provide a broad survey of the field. And so if you were going to do your capstone on word recognition, this particular chapter on word recognition will be summarizing all of the research that's been done on word recognition up to 2020. So it's a huge, broad overview of the field. When I'm doing research, I like to start with a handbook chapter in the area that I'm studying because it gives me a big, wide perspective of the field. And I will, maybe like for word recognition, I'm really interested in sight word learning. So there will be a section particularly on sight word, and I can start looking at the types of authors and publications that that kind of research is found in. And by looking at the bibliography associated with this chapter, I can probably find very quickly 10 or 20 resources that I can go out and find to amplify my lit review. So again, you always want to try to get the most current version of the handbook. These are usually updated every 2 to 4 years, and we have some of these in our library. So those are handbooks. All right, so now the thing that sometimes is confusing for folks is that regardless of the form that an article takes, so an article could be a chapter in a handbook, or it could be a book itself, or it could be an article within a journal, right? There are different types, or I would say genres, of articles, and as a beginning researcher, you want to develop an eye for these different types of articles, okay? So let me go over 4 types of articles, and then we're going to kind of practice getting to know those types of articles, and then after we've done some work together, I'm going to ask you to kind of apply the looking strategies that we've developed together to look at some articles on your own. Okay, so the 4 types of articles. Might not be a bad idea to take some notes here. The first is a research article. Now, a research article is just an article that's describing an experimental or a case study or an ethnography that the researcher has done. You'll probably recognize a research article because it will start with its own little lit review to give you a survey of the field, but then it will talk about things like research design, it will talk about research methods, it will certainly talk about findings and limitations of the study. So research articles are articles that talk about experimental, case study, ethnography, correlational types of research. They're doing something with students. That is one type of literature that you'll be reading. Another type is a review of research. So sometimes you'll get a journal out and you'll be reading an article and it isn't about some kind of experiment. It's actually more the author summarizing other people's research. So reviews of research can be summaries, and that's pretty much what we saw in the Handbook of Reading Research, you know, summaries of how children learn comprehension, or what's the research on word recognition, right? So they're either a summary, which gives you a very broad view of a particular field, or they are what we call position pieces. A position piece is just when the author has a particular idea, and then they use research to convince the reader of that position. Now, it's not their research, but they're looking at the broad publications in the field, and they're picking pieces of research that help to sort of substantiate their opinion. So reviews of research are lovely for us as folks getting to know a particular field for our capstone, because we can quickly see lots of authors who write in our particular area of interest. All right, the third type of piece that you might be reading are theoretical pieces. And theoretical pieces are articles, books, etc. that propose a model or a theory for how something happens. So the author might have a theory about how reading happens. There's a prominent theory out right now by Turner and Go from 1986, an article in which they talk about a theory of reading called the simple view of reading. And in theoretical pieces, the author will come up with this idea or theory or a model, and then sometimes they will use research to kind of illustrate how their model or theory makes sense. All right, and then the last is instructional pieces. Instructional pieces, I love these as a teacher, are just pieces where people talk about ideas about how to teach something. They're not testing an idea, so they're not going out and testing out how their idea works. If they were testing out that idea, it would be a research or experimental article, and they would be talking about subject selection and research methodology and findings. But in an instructional piece, oftentimes journals will publish instructional pieces where people have just come up with the idea and they're They're sharing the idea with folks in our field so that maybe in the future that idea could be tested in some kind of research venue. So these are the 4 types of articles that you would find as you're reading for your capstone: research articles, reviews of research, theoretical pieces, and instructional pieces. Research articles are really nice because they help you see if a particular way of doing something, how it works. So if I'm interested in kids learning sight words, I might be looking for articles about, how people are trying to teach sight words and what's the effect on student learning. Some experimental or case study or ethnography type studies. Now these words that are describing different kinds of research design, we're going to talk about these in our research class. But so don't worry so much if you're not terribly familiar with these descriptive words. Generally, research articles are going to help us know how something works. Reviews of research are great for capstone writers because they give you a nice big perspective of the field. That's other people summarizing the research that's been done in a field. Theoretical pieces are really important because anybody who's doing a capstone will have to have a theoretical frame for their work. And a theoretical frame is just a model or an idea about how something works. So it's nice to be able to recognize theoretical pieces. You'll need one in your capstone. So for example, you might have a theoretical frame. Maybe you have read Vygotsky's Mind and Society, and in that book he talks about a theory of social intelligence, and that might be something that captures your imagination and that you want to include as a way of thinking about your research work in your capstone. Instructional pieces are lovely because they give you ideas about how to do things. And sometimes you read in an instructional piece an idea. So maybe you read about this idea about how to teach kids to form letters using this new piece of technology. And you may have read that as an instructional piece where the author is just describing this idea. And you might decide as a capstone writer to say, you know what, I love that idea. Let me design a research project where I can test how this works with children. So each of these types of articles are going to have a place as you're getting to know your chosen area and will be part of your work in capstone. So in our Blackboard website, we have some articles listed. These 4 in pink are materials that I am actually going to talk about right now, and we're going to identify what type of article they are. These 3 on the bottom, these green ones, are articles that you will be exploring. Now you don't have to read these super carefully. You will look at parts of them, skim them, read the abstract, and that will probably be enough for you to determine what types of articles these 3 are. All right, let's get started. The first article is called Sound Reading and Reading Sounds, The Case for Phonemic Awareness, and this is by Zacey. And if we look at the abstract, we see the National Reading Panel issued a congressional mandate report to identify key skills and methods related to the development of successful reading. One of the first identified skills is phonemic awareness. This column addresses the area of reading instruction and provides suggestions for literature to be shared with young children that support phonemic awareness. 15 children's books will be reviewed and recommended. Okay, so when I look through this paper, I see that they start with an introduction, which most articles do. Then they move into a little lit review that helps me understand what they mean when they're saying phonemic awareness. And then they're showing me pieces of children's literature and providing me a little description about how that piece of children's literature could be used to teach phonemic awareness. So there's no mention in here of testing this particular instructional idea out. Instead, they're just sharing with me this instructional idea. So let's think. Does this feel like it's a research article, a review of research, a theoretical piece, or an instructional piece? Now, the trick is, there is a little bit of, right here, they're doing a little bit of a lit review where they're telling us about research that has been done on phonemic awareness. And then it goes into sharing with us those pieces of children's literature that you could use to teach phonemic awareness. So here's the trick. Do we think this is a research article, which is talking about an experimental case study or ethnography type study? Or does this look like an instructional piece that's just showing us some curriculum ideas? Of the two, what do you think? I don't know. Let's see. I think it is, yes, an instructional piece. Primarily because it's showing us some curriculum materials and talking about how they could be used. All right, so let's try another one. Here's our 4 types again. And this time we're looking at a text called The Simple View of Reading, Advantages and False Impressions by Katz. The abstract says, in this article, I highlight the impact of the simple view of reading has had on the field of reading over the last 30 years. I argue that the simple view of reading has led to many significant advances in our understanding of reading comprehension. I also contend that it has contributed to some false impressions concerning comprehension that impact research and practice in important ways. Okay, so this is, from the beginning, they tell me that they are going to talk about a particular perspective, the simple view of reading. And they're going to use research to help me understand this particular perspective. So, and right here is this lovely little sentence that tells me what the whole piece is going to be about. And as you'll notice, there are parts of articles that give you specific bits of information. So reading an abstract tells you what the whole thing is about. And then reading like the first paragraph also helps you see what a piece is about. So when you are looking at an article, before you read the whole thing, you might want to just read the abstract, maybe the first paragraph or so, maybe look through at the other pages to just generally see what you feel this article could be providing you. What type of article is it, and is that the type you need? In this little sentence here, they tell us what the whole piece is about. They say, in this commentary, I will highlight these advances as well as the contributions of the other research papers in this issue. I will also raise the possibility that the impact of the scientific view of reading has not been completely positive. I will argue that the simplicity of its presentation has unintentionally contributed to some false impressions about comprehension, and in so doing has led us astray in important ways. So right now I'm feeling that this piece is about this person's perspective or opinion on the simple view of reading. And this person is, I can see right here, they're using lots of different articles and research being cited right here in their argument to substantiate their perspective or their position. So I'm not thinking this is an actual research. They're not talking about doing a research study. They're talking about showing how their opinion is supported by research. So in that case, oh, and by the way, we call this, when you have a little sentence like this that tells people what they're about to read in your paper, we call that a roadmap. This is so nice because it basically says, when you read my paper, I'm going to talk about A, B, C, and D, and we're going to learn to write those. So I'm just pointing that out to you right now. All right. So in terms of this article, is it a research article talking about a research study? Is it a review of research, either summarizing research or creating a position or an opinion and then using research to back it up? Is it a theoretical piece which talks about a particular model or theory, or is it an instructional piece showing us about curriculum? I don't think it's an instructional piece for sure, and I don't think it's a research piece because I don't see words like methods and findings in here. So it's either a review of research or a theoretical piece. So think about it for a minute. let's see what it is. It is a review of research. They are telling us they have a particular position, that the scientific view of reading is useful but has some problems, and then they're going to use research to convince us of that fact. All right. Are you feeling like this is doable? Let's try another. We can do it. Okay, here's one. Decoding Reading and Reading Disability. This is by Goth and Tunmer. And in this article, they are saying, to clarify the role of decoding in reading and reading disability, a simple model of reading is proposed, which holds that reading equals the product of decoding and comprehension. It follows that there must be types of reading disability resulting from an inability to decode, an inability to comprehend, or both. It is argued that the first is dyslexia, the second is hyperlexia, and the third common or garden variety reading disability. Okay. So right here they tell us that they are presenting a model. And when you are presenting a model, that would tend to be a theoretical piece where you're proposing a model and then using research to show us why that model makes sense. If we look here further, we see the actual model right here. It is the simple view that reading equals decoding times oral reading comprehension. So they are showing us a model with words. And so, if you're showing us a model with words, yes, this is a theoretical piece. If I were writing a capstone, maybe I'm writing a capstone on the role of phonics, and this might be a model that I could use because Goth and Turmer are saying that comprehension is a function of kids being able to decode or apply phonics knowledge in reading. All right. One last one. Here's one. This is from the Reading Research Quarterly, which we talked about earlier. This is by Roberts and Friends, and it's called Preschoolers, Alphabetic Learning, Cognitive Teaching Sequence, and English Proficiency Influences. It starts in the abstract. In this study, the authors address two areas of inquiry: the influence of enlisting three underlying cognitive learning processes in alphabet learning, and order effects for letter name and letter sound instruction. So they go in and talk about the study that they're doing. They had research assistants who were providing instruction for 10 weeks for 12 to 15 minutes in these preschools. And at the end, they were measuring to see how much kids learned about the alphabet based on the instructional techniques that were provided. So in the very beginning of this abstract, they say, in this study. And as we look at their article, we see methods, we see samples, so how they picked their students. We definitely see data display for just browsing through this article. So as we look at this article from the Reading Research Quarterly, we would identify this as definitely, this is a research article. Make sense? Okay, so we are going to take Dwight's advice. And you can do it if you believe. Nope, you can do it if you can do it. So let's let you try this. On your Module 1 annotation guide, which is attached on Blackboard, you have this little display. On Blackboard, you have 3 little articles in green. What you're going to do is you're going to hit one of these articles in green on Blackboard, and you're going to sample through it. You don't have to read every word of that article, but do like we did in this instance. Look at the abstract, look at the first paragraph, skim and scan the article a little bit, and you want to determine if Yop and Yop 2000 is it a research article, a review of research, a theoretical piece, or an instructional piece. And you're going to write it here, but I also want you to briefly explain why you think it is that kind of article. So I think that this is an experiment, this is a research article because I see, and then talk about what you saw that convinced you. Then you're going to go down here to Kohler, 2007. You're going to sample through this article and then write what kind of article it is and tell me why you think so. And then last we have Templeton right here. And then on your sheet you'll say which kind of article it is and explain why you think so. All right, this is just training you to read like a researcher. We have to know that these different types of articles exist, and we have to develop an eye for identifying them so that we can find the types of articles we need for our capstone lit review work. All right, so go ahead and complete that section, and then you'll be ready to move on to the second screencast in this module. Good luck!